Hey folks, and welcome back to the Stitch Up, and hey, welcome 2022. We did it. We're here. Fantastic. Great to have you back. Great to be back. It was a lovely little break, but yeah, let's hit it, man. Let's get it. It's season 2, second half of season 2. One of my personal faves, one that I watched a couple of times over the Christmas break, and one that I'm totally repping right now. It's 1991's Batman Returns.
Meow.
So now, if you don't know the story of this one, where you been? What have you been doing? It's the Batmans. It's probably the best Batmans. I know that's a hot take. I don't like using the word hot take. Spicy thought is a better way to put it. Yeah, I think this is the best Batman film, and I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why I don't think it's The Dark Knight. Batman Returns is probably my favourite superhero movie. And by saying that, I mean something that is a whole in of itself. Yes, it is a sequel, technically, but it's not part of an ongoing cinematic universe the way that every superhero movie now is. It exists unto itself, even kind of outside of the original 1989 film. The thing that I like about it most is that it is a singular vision. It's batshit crazy, but it swings, like it really swings wide for impressive and psychological and interesting ideas about character, about what a villain is and what a hero is and where the two meet. It's just doing a lot of stuff that the 1989 version didn't do, but also superhero films don't really do anymore. One of the most interesting parts about it, and I credit this to the film critic Angelica Jade Bastien, she said, movies these days, particularly superhero movies, are kind of sexless. You know, they're very neutered versions of what actual adult behavior is. Take the Wonder Woman films, for example. You know, she's very virginal, even though she does sleep with Steve Trevor in those films. There's this kind of like this purity thing that's going on, and it's impractical in close quarters relationships between attractive people, like in Batman Returns with, you know, Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle. They get together in this film, well, after a fashion, because that's kind of what would happen. This movie is sexy. It is sleek. It does have some grotesquities that you wouldn't, or some grotesqueness rather, you wouldn't expect from a superhero movie. As I said, it is a singular vision, Tim Burton's idea of what this world would have ultimately been had he been able to go forward with the other sequels. The reason I like it more than The Dark Knight is because I think you can remove a lot of elements out of that film and it stays the same. Christopher Nolan example, his direction and his vision for it is, you know, it has a signature, an imprint, but that script could be given to any other director and the result would be not too dissimilar from what we ended up getting. You give someone the script for Batman Returns who isn't Tim Burton, and the film is radically different. The Dark Knight doesn't have the design and the pairing of adult and cartoon sensibilities the way that Batman Returns does. And also, I think The Dark Knight suffers in that Batman is portrayed too much of a communicator, like he talks too much, for starters. That's a real simple thing, but it always bugged me. And if you take Heath Ledger out of that role and put anyone else in, including Joaquin Phoenix or whoever else it is we've got playing the Joker at this point in time, the movie suffers almost 50%. I actually think Dark Knight Rises is a more interesting film because Batman's barely in it. It takes place over a period of months, so it's got quite an arc. The side characters are the ones who are more interesting. And, you know, spoilers, but Bane ending up being kind of like a lackey for Talia, even though they telegraphed it a little bit, was an interesting turn. Certainly more interesting than what we all know the Joker to be. That was just my little simple comparison and why this film is my favourite Batman picture. Directed by Tim Burton, Sam Hamm, the writer, returned along with Daniel Waters. Batman is again called into duty when, you know, a penguin-like creature rises from the sewers and starts to kind of take over Gotham's mind, really. He kind of brainwashes people into believing that he is, you know, not some grotesque child murderer, which he actually is, but through manipulation by Christopher Walken's Max Schreck, becomes a public figure, becomes a person in governance. And it's fucking crazy because it kind of works. There's some interesting stuff going there, particularly with class. Like, we're talking about class a lot in this film, being that Bruce Wayne and Oswald Cobblepot come from the same social structure. They come from the same hierarchy. You know, they are elites. It's just that, you know, Oswald Cobblepot was abandoned and Bruce Wayne wasn't. And then, of course, you have Selena Kyle coming in. She is, very much a figure of feminine meekness, a typical kind of stereotype of the mousy, blonde secretary who ends up getting murdered in the film, you know, if it's like a noir or something like that. But the converse as part of the story is that she then becomes, you know, not only kind of a villain and a hero at the same time. And in essence, it's her story. It really is her who we follow, more so than Batman, definitely, and absolutely more so than the Penguin.
How could you? I'm a woman.
I'm sorry, I
just want to do some trivia, though. Some interesting bits and pieces. I'm not... there's no one here. I'm just looking at a computer screen. Burgess Meredith, who played the Penguin in the 60s TV show, was asked to return, not as the Penguin, but as the Penguin's father, that role was played by Paul Rubens. Or Pee-wee Herman. I don't actually think he has any lines. 50% of the Warner Brothers backlot was taken up by sets for this film. And it totally makes sense because it was only shot on sets. They were so big, in fact, that Michelle Pfeiffer would consistently get lost on her way to trying to find wherever she was supposed to be shooting on that particular day, which I think is hilarious. Keaton was paid $11 million to return as Bruce Wayne and Batman. By today's standards, that's $23 million, which probably doesn't sound like a lot considering if you think whatever the typical would be for if you're thinking about, you know, salary and back end. I mean, who gets paid the most? The Rock, I guess. The Rock would make hundreds of $millions off a movie because he gets back end. But without back end, just the salary up front, $23 million by today's standards is still pretty incredible. Pfeiffer had to be vacuum sealed into the Catwoman costume, and it makes sense when you see it because it is tight to her skin in an absurd way. It's such a great costume. Like, it looks so awesome. I don't know how I suppose, and not to compare them again, but Anne Hathaway's suit in Dark Knight Rises wasn't as PVC, like it wasn't as matrixy leather kind of fetishy stuff. It was sort of more practical cat burglar, you know, stretchy kind of material sort of thing. And it wasn't supposed to look like a cat either. And they went through 60 of them during filming. So I'm assuming she kind of had to be cut out of it every time, which would make sense. And the funny thing is, I was talking to someone about it the other day on IG, and they were saying, you know, what constitutes a Christmas movie? And my adage is that any movie that mentions Christmas in the dialogue is a Christmas movie. Boom, you're done. That's not enough for some people, and that's totally cool. Like Spider-Man No Way Home, set in December. Christmas movie. At least it was released in December. This film, an absolutely Christmas film, was released in June. The most interesting tidbit for me, though, is Batman 89 was huge. Like, I was young enough at the time. I would have been 7, maybe 8, or nearly 8 probably. And I didn't see the first one in cinemas. I was too young. I remember the stuff around it. I remember seeing it on magazine covers. I remember noticing magazine covers because it's Batman, you know. And it was an enormous film. Like, it was so popular and so profitable. Hence why, you know, the second one was so guarded in terms of its secrecy on set. That Academy Award winner at this time, Kevin Costner, he just won for directing Dances with Wolves like a year before this maybe, or 2. He wasn't allowed on set. Kevin Costner, Robin Hood himself, couldn't get on the set of Batman. And I know Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves isn't much of a Robin Hood movie. I fucking like it. I think it's cool. But that's probably the most iconic name role he's ever had. Oh, wait, no, you're Superman's dad. Superman's dad couldn't even get on the set of Batman. Wild times. Let's get into the meat of it. Like I said before, 89 was such a huge movie that immediately after, they said to Tim Burton, hey, Tim, do whatever you want. And he fucking did. He did. He did exactly what he wanted to do. And it's remarkable that he managed to get away with it. The thing that separates this from other superhero movies now and of the time, I think, is the cast. It is a prestige cast. These were probably some of the biggest names in the world at the time. Michael Keaton, probably more because he was Batman. Michelle Pfeiffer, like she had already been nominated for an Academy Award 3 times at this point. Danny DeVito was a household name, not just because of Taxi, but because of other shows that he did and other movies. And Christopher Walken was, you know, we're talking, was Dead Zone after this? No, it must have been before, you know. He was well known as a great kind of I think he was sort of a character actor at the time. It's not what he is now. This is sort of before the parody. I adore Michelle Pfeiffer. I've always thought she was probably one of the most talented actors in the Hollywood system. She is always great, like consistently doing comedy and drama and things like this, which are kind of in between. She fucking murders this role. Like no one has successfully touched the Catwoman role in any other medium, I don't think. I feel like maybe comic books, you know, you can exclude because that's the progenitor of it all. But if you're talking animation or, you know, radio play, probably not. But other movies and TV shows that have kind of adapted the myth of Catwoman in some fashion never reached the levels of accuracy in terms of like the psychopathy of a character like Catwoman. I mean, it's a little bit different in this one because she's almost a supernatural being, but you understand what I'm saying. Everybody's on. Everybody is just, you know, giving it everything they've got. As I said, this is Walken before his parody. As soon as he did the Weapon of Choice film clip, he became a parody of himself. But this is pre that, and he's so in it. And he has such a beautiful stillness and a patience with not just the character, but with the scenes. And he's got that weird kind of like, I wouldn't describe it as staccato, but it's a very weird like way that his diction is unusual. Someone once said to me that he removes the punctuation from his scripts, which I think is fucking balderdash, but balderdash? I don't know where I plucked that from. But I think that's crap. I don't think that's true at all. But it does sound like that because it kind of goes where it shouldn't. I'll drop some bits and pieces from this movie in as we go. And you'll see. You'll kind of feel it. And, you know, if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about anyway.
What's the deal, Mr. Shrek? Is the Penguin a personal friend?
Yes, he's a personal friend of this whole city. So have a heart. Give the Constitution a rest, okay? It's Christmas.
All right, let's go.
Keaton's doing his trademark stoicism. So the thing that he does as opposed to, you know, multiplicity or Beetlejuice. So he was actually a stand-up comic. I was surprised to find. Not a particularly good one, which is probably why he stuck to acting. He's great as Bruce Wayne in that I can kind of see him acting. Do you know what I mean? Like he's Bruce is the performance. It always should be that way.
I commissioned this report. I thought you might want to take a look at it. Point is, Max, Gotham City has a power surplus. I'm sure you know that. My question is, what's your angle?
I think Bale did that quite successfully as well, in that his Bruce Wayne, you actively saw him pretending to be someone else or pretending to be something that he wasn't. I like that idea that Bruce is the artifice and Batman is the actual person. Keaton does that really well, and he has more opportunity to do this as well because in his Batman films, he barely says anything. There's a couple of moments where he speaks, you know, once or twice. It's sort of very monosyllabic, get to the point, and I dig that a lot. Danny DeVito, man, how he was not even nominated for an Oscar, and I'll look like a fool if he was, so correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but how he was not nom for an Oscar for this is fucking insane, because he is, like, the comedy's there, and it's weird and creepy a lot of the time too. There's a lot of sort of like sexual innuendo stuff going on. The tragedy and sort of the winking villain without being the winking villain, because there's nothing more irritating than a villain who's glib. You know, you find that in shows like Supernatural and stuff a lot, where they're like, oh, I'm a villain, and in women they do it a lot. It's really poorly written. Female villains tend to be like overly sexualized, or the way they talk is only an innuendo, and the male ones end up being like really smart and quirky, and everybody sounds like they're written by Aaron Sorkin, which is not true to what a villain is. Like the Penguin, there's a performance there as well. Like he is pretending to be, you know, a public figure, and takes that on board because then he'll get attention, then he'll get power. What he really wants is love, and he cannot achieve that through normal means because he's a monster. And I don't mean physical. I mean internally, he's a monster because he wants to punish all children for the fact that he was punished.
Right now, my troops are fanning out across town for your children. Yes, for your firstborn sons.
And the fact that he's at all likable is not only a testament to the screenplay, but to DeVito. Like, he absolutely destroyed it. And I don't actually think he's been better than this. Then again, I haven't seen Twins in a while. Or ever. Watching this film also makes me wonder what Burton's Batman Forever would have been had he returned. Like how he would have not only brought Robin in, because Robin was supposed to be in this film. Marlon Wayans was cast He even went through costume fittings, and they had toys built of him, and they excised the story from the screenplay because there was too much going on, clearly, with the introduction of, if you think about it, 3 villains, because you've got Catwoman, Penguin, and Shrek, all need origin stories. Shrek's kind of fully formed, but, you know, everybody needs to get from start to finish. To introduce Robin as well would have been overstuffed. I think that would have been awesome. Like, I think it would have been really cool. Marlon Wayans is a great actor. It would have been interesting to see how Burton would have handled Forever and who he would have cast. You might have got Tommy Lee Jones. I doubt you would have got Jim Carrey, though. I think he might have gone for Robin Williams, he was campaigning for the role pretty hard, was my understanding. But yeah, it would have been not what Batman Forever ended up being. It's also kind of like a textbook noir film, except the detective's in a cape, which is what I love about it so much. And it almost feeds into the Shadow, the character of the Shadow, which kind of has its roots. Batman has its roots in that very much. And even Bob Kane came out and said that. You've got, you know, the femme fatale character, absolutely. You know, you've got the corruption inside, like the system, kind of Citizen Kane-ish, with Shrek as the Kane. And you've got great lines like Shrek says to Bruce Wayne at one point,
Blue Bloods tire easy.
I love that. That's so good, man. That's such a great line. And then when Batman and the Penguin finally meet in the street, and it was a real treat. They had some meat, and but then had to admit defeat. That was ridiculous. Anyway, what was I talking about? Yeah, so that Batman and the Penguin meet for the first time, and he's like, you know, I'm assessing the devastation, upstanding mayor stuff.
You're not the mayor.
Things change.
And then there's a nice little pause, and the Penguin goes,
You don't really think you'll win, do you?
and then Batman says,
Things change.
like, that is straight out of Casablanca or something, you know? Also, I want you to remember something as we go along. There were Happy Meals for this film. Legit. There were Happy Meal toys for this movie. Just remember that. Looking at it from a practical point of view, you know, the sets, the design is incredible. It's just so well envisaged and realized, like from conception to actual product. Danny Elfman's score, I don't think he's been better. I think this is the best Danny Elfman score. If I could buy it on vinyl, I would, and you probably can. And the cinematography, again, is very noir. It's got those, like, the sharp shadows, dutching of the camera, and, you know, tilting of the camera. There's some weird geometry to the fights that you wouldn't normally see, or they would normally be quicker edited, perhaps, or, you know, the pace would be a bit different, but they kind of take their time a little bit more and let things play out in front of a camera in the way that a film noir would let that kind of sit, you know, and let things have their, you know, have a bit of weight to them. So the film starts with the Penguin being pitched into the sewer, which is a great way to start your children's movie. Again, Happy Meals. He gets adopted by penguins who live in the sewer. Cool. I didn't know there were penguins in the sewer anywhere, but apparently that's the case. He grows up in that environment. Bruce grows up in his environment. And 33 years later, we're in Gotham City. It's Christmas time. The Shrek boardroom scene is really important because you get 2 key points to what the story is. One is sort of the political machinations that make this film a lot smarter than it has any right to be, because it is about, you know, class and social structure and the discourse that goes on within governments, or within, at least, you know, higher powers of elected officials and unelected officials. It introduces who will become our femme fatale, and it shows in the way that they treat Selena Kyle, which is very poorly. She says, you know, I've got a suggestion or just like a question, and he's like, we haven't properly housebroken her yet. Creepy. Just with like a horrible way to describe a person, you know, as if they need to be reared or broken in. It's not fucking Taming of the Shrew. How broken men have power over women even though they are broken men. It's a beautiful statement about how ludicrous that is as a concept. The other thing that's funny about this scene, in the background, you see a picture of Max Schreck with a bunch of celebs, one of them who's Arnold Schwarzenegger. I wonder if they were like, hey, that could be... Maybe that's not Arnold Schwarzenegger. Maybe it's the Frosty guy. What's his name? Mr. Frost? That's not Mr. Frost, Regan, you dickhead. Is it Mr. No, Mr. Freeze. Victor Freeze. Not Mr. Frost. That sounds like a guy who makes ice cream. So anyway, Shrek comes down into the street and has to give this speech, which he's forgotten to bring down. And, you know, he does this amazing shitty governmentarian speech or this amazingly shitty speech of like, I wish I could hand out more than expensive baubles.
I wish I could hand out world peace and unconditional love.
Wrapped in a big bowl. And then, that wasn't very Walken, but you know what I'm saying. And then there cuts to the reveal of the Penguin, not in full frame. He's like seen, it's a POV through like a sewer grate and his hands are there. He's like, oh, but you can.
Oh, but you will.
And then the big package arrives behind him, like the huge big present. And everyone's like, what the hell's this giant present? And the mayor goes, good idea. And he says, not mine. And then boom, the circus gang attacks. They put the bat signal in the sky and then it cuts to Wayne Manor. And there's Batman sitting there stoic, just like that. And boom, the light hits the sky. It gets caught by two like reflecting lights that are on the top of Wayne Manor. Bing, bing. And then shoots in through the window and kind of wakes him up and he stands and you see the big thing behind him as he stands. It's an amazing image, but you have to imagine that Bruce Wayne, despite the fact that he doesn't, well, again, he does kill a few people in this film, but despite the fact that Bruce Wayne doesn't actually kill in the mythos, he must have had those contractors murdered. The dudes who installed those two things. Alfred's not installing giant mirror light fucking things on the roof of Wayne Manor. He's not doing that. The guy's 786 years old. And Batman not doing it. He's too busy being stoic and being Batman. He's had to have hired contractors to do it. How do you explain that? Yeah, I want two bat-sized lights on the top of my roof. No reason. By the way, what's your home address? Like, those guys are dead. Batman goes into town, thwarts some of this stuff. He's got this weird, like, he comes in with the Batmobile, which is awesome. Batmobile's still great. He rescues Selena Kyle from a thuggish clown person. And you see his costume, and it's matte. It's a really nice kind of matte, as opposed to that shining finish. It's weird because he's got this kind of like grill. I'll put pictures up, but he's got this weird grill where he's at. Like normally it's the sculpted ab thing, like the Greek statue kind of thing. But in this, it looks like, I don't know, it looks like barn doors on one of these lights. You know what I mean? Like they're sort of like clipped down into each other, and it doesn't seem to serve any function unless it's like ventilating it or something. But anyway, I digress. So he takes this guy out, and then Selena Kyle picks up the taser. Who the guy had on her. He was holding a taser on her, and she picks it up and tries it on him, and that ends up being Chekhov's taser because she uses it at the end to kill Max Shrek. Amazing. Chekhov's taser. Great screenplay writing in terms of, everybody's got a hero story, even if they're not the hero. The Penguin's kidnapping Max Shrek and taking him down into the sewer, and it's fucking dark, man. He reveals this plan, in part to Shrek's character, all the while blackmailing him, saying, I know where the bodies are buried, motherfucker. Like, literally, he takes out a human hand, and it's the hand of Fred, who used to be Shrek's partner, who he had murdered. That's pretty dark for a film that had Happy Meals. Again, I remember the fucking toy. I remember it. It was a little Batmobile. If I can find a picture, I will. Little Batmobile with a Batman's in it. I don't remember the Catwoman one. Maybe I didn't have it. But the Penguin one was a penguin dude in the little duck boat that he's got. Wild. Human severed hands in the film. After Selena goes back, forgetting, she's got the scene where she comes home and she's talking to her cats and pouring them milk, and she's a very sad, lonely person, and her boyfriend's not going on a trip with her, and then she leaves a message for herself you've got to go back to the office and get prepped for this meeting that your boss has with Bruce Wayne. So she goes back to the office, at which point she reveals that she's broken into archive files and found out some stuff about the proposed power plant that Shrek wants to put into Gotham will actually be a capacitor and will be drawing power from Gotham City and storing it as opposed to disseminating it to the denizens. And then there's this little moment of like fake out with Shrek, and he's she's like, it's not like you just kill me, and he's like,
Actually, it's a lot like that.
Laugh, laugh, laugh. And then he pitches her out a window. So she falls down and hits the ground with this beautiful... Sounds crazy. I went and saw it at the Astor, and on the big screen, that thud, that hit of the ground, and the last of her breath, it was affecting. Like, it was really something. And then you don't see breath come out of her again. So she's clearly dead. And then all these cats come. You get this weird plinky music from Danny Elfman. And all of a sudden, she's a super being. There's been nothing supernatural. I mean, apart from a penguin child being born, I suppose, but there's been nothing supernatural in these films previous, I guess. Not to this extent. She's literally resurrected by cats and then has 9 lives. Like, I don't know where the supernatural stuff came from. It's cool, but it's not canon at all to the character. Then you have the great part of her coming back and looping the same motions that she had last time, going through, but like dropping the light in her apartment and getting the milk and pouring it and drinking it herself. And then she's triggered by a message about Gotham Lady Perfume. Like, the boss will ask you to stay late for work after a candlelight staff meeting for 2. And it says it's from Shrek's apartments as well. She loses her shit. The score rises. The Catwoman theme is incredible. Just beautiful. And that scene where she's going through the hello there turns into hell here. She somehow makes an entire Catwoman suit out of one leather jacket. And then she's like,
I don't know about you, Miss Kitty, but I feel so much yummier.
What an amazing origin. This is in the first half an hour, to go from mousy executive assistant receptionist person to murdered by her boss to supernatural being to Catwoman within a matter of minutes. Like, that is so amazing structure. Just great structure. Just that tiny little arc just for her, it's beautiful. I'm talking about Catwoman a lot because I do feel like it is her story. She comes in this, the boardroom with Bruce, and he's fighting with Max. You think you could go how many rounds with Muhammad Shrek? About the power plant. She comes in, kind of banged up a bit, and they're both like just transfixed by her. She's got something, and her power over the two of them is just remarkable from that moment. And then, then she kind of leaves and walks him out, and they think about having a date. And then there's, the big guy who plays Zangief in the Street Fighter movie. I don't know the guy's name. Huge big dude. He plays the son of Shrek, and he's like, what are we going to do about it, Dad? And he's like, nothing surprises me.
Except your late mother. Who'd have thought Selena had a brain to damage? Bottom line, she tries to blackmail me. I'll drop her out a higher window. Meantime,
I got better fish to fry. And then out of camera, it's like, fucking hell, man. Do you want to... Can you get any bigger? I wonder if at any point Tim Burton went, hey, Chris. That's my Tim Burton, by the way. Can you do that a little bigger? Like, you would never fucking have to say that to Christopher Walken. Chris, go bigger. No way. Then you've got the cool ruse that Shrek and Penguin have kind of devised as the Penguin will come and save the mayor's baby and then usurp the mayor's power and be put in Parliament so that then Shrek can manipulate him. And the sad thing is, Shrek's kind of the hierarching villain in this. He's the one who is kind of making everybody else... He's manipulating everything, at all times to get what he needs. And it comes from manipulating a person who doesn't understand human interaction properly. The Penguin has been locked in the sewer and been part of the circus gang. Not that there's anything wrong with circus people, but it's not the way that we would think of it in terms of like healthy interactions with human beings. So he can't read manipulation on someone. He can't read that artifice that Shrek's putting up. He does think that Shrek's his friend and he's trying to do him right, but really it's for his own ends. So he saves the baby and then kind of presents himself to the world and wants to find out who he is. So you see him, late at night, he's in the Hall of Records, he's writing down something and Bruce Wayne's like a little sus on him, and he's driving in the Batmobile, driving past City Hall and watches, the Penguin in there writing down names, what we'll later find out. Like, he says he wants to find out who he is. He says, I want to find out who my parents were and thusly who I am. But what he's actually doing is writing down the names of all the firstborn sons of Gotham so that he can fucking murder them. Happy Meals. McDonald's was a partner in this. Then again, they probably killed more people than the Penguin. Burn. Sizzle take. What was the point I was trying to make? Oh yeah, so Batman's like driving and he looks in the thing and Alfred comes up the video monitor and he's fucking ironing. I was like, you could have had him doing anything else. You could have had him doing anything else than ironing, for crying out loud. Alfred says, what are you doing still up? And he's like, I don't trust this guy. I think he knows who his parents are. I think there's something else. And he's right, there is something else. Murdered kids. I never understood as well, you see this in the cemetery scene, the newsies, the old-time newsie guys with the flash bulb cameras and the graphite pen and paper, as opposed to I don't know, what was it, 1992? They might have had a dictaphone, maybe. And the cars and all that stuff. It's kind of this weird, like, removed from time period. It doesn't tell you what time it is. It doesn't tell you what year it is at any point. And it's got that weird Art Deco style where it looks like it might be the 40s, but it's also got the technology is a little bit more modern. Like the CD thing's pretty funny. We'll talk about that later. But he finds out who his parents are and says his name's Oswald Cobblepot, and there's a guy there, and he says all these great little gags that pepper in these little sort of adult gags. Where he's like, oh, Mr. Cobblepot, you never get to settle up with him, huh? And he's like, true.
I was their number one son, and they treated me like number two.
Catwoman gets her first sort of proper scene where she saves someone from a mugging and then fucking berates her for it. She's like, waiting for some Batman to save you. I'm Catwoman.
Hear me roar.
She does a whole bunch of flips. Flip, which is pretty cool, and a great way to have her be introduced in costume in full and see her power, and the fact that she doesn't give a shit. She didn't want to save that woman. She couldn't care less. She got the opportunity to beat the shit out of a man who was overpowering a woman. That was all about her. That had nothing to do with the victim. Keaton and Pfeiffer have great chemistry together, particularly in the scenes where they are Catwoman and Batman, but then again, there is a tenderness there when they're the artifice versions of themselves, the secret identities, if you will, and they're really, really great. Story's great. In fact, I fucking hope Catwoman turns up in this Flash picture. Wouldn't that be wicked? Now we get to probably the most ludicrous scene in the entire film, and probably in any of the Bat films at all, apart from all the close-ups of buns in Batman and Robin and Batman Forever. Not that there's a problem with that. Just saying. Happens a lot. Buns. Bat buns, no less. Shrek goes up. He's set up this campaign office because he wants, Oswald to be the mayor. So he's set up this campaign office. He's got all these people working for him. And he lures him down from, wherever the Penguin's staying with his circus friends with an actual fish, like a raw fish. Like, I know he grew up in the sewer and he's probably used to eating raw stuff, but really a fish? And he eats it all gross and everything. And then you talk to these image consultants, and the guy goes,
Not a lot of reflective surfaces down on the sewer, huh?
and he's like, could be worse, my nose could be gushing blood. Laughs, and then nearly bites this guy's nose off. Shrek pulls him aside. He's covered in blood in the mouth. This guy's in great turmoil. I want you to be the mayor. And he's like, but what are you talking about? He's like, well, we can impeach the mayor. You can get rid of people who are in office. It happens all the time. You need a catalyst. You need something big, and then you can fill the void. And he says,
I'd like to fill her void.
Holy shit! Happy Meal. Shrek says you need something. You need to get the mayor offside of the public by having something extreme happen, like a Reichstag fire or whatever. And he's like, oh, okay, I've got an idea. Burn, baby, burn. Circus gang attacks again. Batman appears out of nowhere and murders at least 2 people. One of them with a bomb. That guy's just chunks. He's a chunk of a dude now. He's just mince on the Gotham City skyline. I also wanted, when you see these guys attack, and there's one who's like, he's got, nunchucks. There's one with scythes. There's one with swords and all that stuff. Like, are all circus people also ninjas? I suppose some of them will probably be acrobats at least. And if you got the circus going, maybe that's how they were going to introduce Robin through the circus thing. Anyway, doesn't make any sense. But I was just wondering, why are all these circus performers trained in martial arts? Seems weird. You see Catwoman in the Shrek's department store, and this is fucking really cool. She whips off the heads of a bunch of mannequins before the 2 security guards turn up, and one of them goes,
I don't know whether to open fire or fall in love.
Very noir line. And then her line after it is,
You poor guys. Always confusing your pistols with your privates.
Completely noir. Remind me of Double Indemnity, actually. But she does the bit where she's whipping off the heads of the mannequins. And she did that for real. There was a footage I saw on some social media of her doing it, and a camera filming her on set. thunderous round of applause for her doing it. And she trained with the whip for a really long time to get that right, which is super impressive because it can't be easy. Then again, Harrison Ford does it. He doesn't look terribly committed to much, except weed. And then you've got the great moment I was talking about before with Batman and the Penguin kind of meeting. And out comes Catwoman. Flip, flip. And the score builds and builds and builds. And she stops straight to camera, puts her hands down.
Meow.
Just incredible. It sets up the sexy stuff, but the threatening stuff as well. Like, you know, he knocks her off the building and then saves her. She's like, who are you? You know, I want to see the man behind the bat. You know, then you can see the woman behind the cat. Where are you? And then off camera, she grabs his dick. And that's absolutely what she's doing. You can't convince me otherwise. And you see him later, he's been punched by her and he's like, pulls out the knitting needle thing, whatever it is. And he's like, Alfred, can you bring me some antiseptic ointment, whatever. Like, how good's your armor if it can't take a knitting needle? Or one of the things that you put on your finger to knit with. I assume that's what it is. Or maybe it's to unstitch things. And she's got a bunch of them on her hands from when she was building the suit. But like, if your armor can't take that, it's shit. You got shit armor. Mate, what's with the grills, mate? Go back to the abs. They were working better for you. Catwoman goes to the Penguin and says, you know, I want to take down Batman. I want to be
An integral part in his degradation.
Oh, words and magic. It's so good. It's such a great script. It's 90% of the reason why I like it. It is just the tightest script ever and does everything it needs to do. It's fucking nuts, but it does it all. And she's lying on his bed and he says,
Just the pussy I've been looking for.
now I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, if you can pierce through the veil of that innuendo, but he's not talking about a cat. And if that's not bad enough, she like kicks him, but wouldn't kick him, but like she puts her leg out. She's lying on the bed and she puts her leg out, sort of stops him here, and he smells her feet. I'm like, Tarantino must have done a pass on the script. I always make fun of Tarantino with his feet thing. I don't know to kink shame anyone. Enjoy feet. And they sort of come up with the idea of like framing Batman by killing the Ice Princess, the one who lights up the tree. And you also, this is the point as well, I'd never noticed this before, maybe because I'd only ever watched it on a smaller screen, but seeing it at the Astor on the big screen, and it was a 4K restoration as well, which was just mint. And you know it's mint because I'm using the word mint and no one's used that since 1996. You can see all the stitching coming loose, like where it's been damaged, and it's literally hanging in tatters, like her suit degrades over time. I don't know if they did this on purpose, but it sort of feels indicative of her psyche as well. So Bruce and Selina have their little date. This is great back and forth as well, like talking about Vicky Vale and all that stuff. I'll put a little bit of it in here.
What went wrong? Hang on. I think I know. You kept things from her.
No, I told her everything.
They kiss, both hurt each other from where the injuries are, and then pull back, and then they realise, Bruce sees on the TV that Batman's been framed. So he has to leave suddenly. Selina wants to leave as well because she wants to go and be involved because it's part of her plan too. And she's sort of saying to Alfred, not knowing that Bruce is Batman yet.
He makes me feel the way I hope I really am.
No, don't say that.
Could you just make up a sonnet or something, a dirty limerick?
Michael Gough, who plays Alfred, goes,
"One has just sprung to mind."
Just such a beautiful delivery. Catwoman and Batman have it out again when Batman's trying to rescue the Ice Princess. He finds her up on the roof after the fight, and Penguin comes out, long dart, and throws I nearly said a pelican then, umbrella, opens, bats come out. She falls to her death onto the thing that lights up the tree, and all the bats come out. The cops then come up, shoot Batman, and he falls, and Catwoman ends up on top of him, and they're having a little tete-a-tete.
Seems like every woman you try to save ends up dead. Or deeply resentful.
Another great noir line. And there's the bit about the mistletoe.
Mistletoe can be deadly if you eat it.
But a kiss can be even deadlier if you mean it.
That's important. They've rigged his car. And this is another really weird design thing that I can only imagine is an idea that someone's had, because it doesn't necessarily something you would have to write in the screenplay. He would just have to get into some sort of car accident or car situation that needed a very specific a piece of equipment to help. It didn't have to be this, but he's being chased, and he the Penguin has control of the car. Batman gets it back, records also the audio of what he's saying, and he pulls into an alley, and ahead of him is a single, almost bicycle lane length in between the two buildings, and he hits a button and nothing happens, He's like, uh-oh, now we're worried. Hits it again, and all of a sudden the Batmobile goes single file. Like, you know how in the Dark Knight trilogy, it turns into the bike. The two front wheels switch, the seat comes up, and it bursts out. This bits come off, this comes off, this comes off, this comes off. Then the wheels kind of come in, and it goes like single file running down the street. And then he goes through and manages to make it through this gap. The only way this works is if Bruce Wayne has measured that very, very particular like thing between the buildings beforehand. Otherwise, why would you be prepared for your car to do that? Catwoman and Penguin are up on a top of a building next to some gargoyles, and he comes onto her, gives her a ring. She's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, come on.
Can't you picture? It's dark in the mayor's mansion. I'm bushed. So here you come into the bedroom.
What do you say? And she's like,
I wouldn't touch you to scratch you.
and he's like, you lousy minx, you sent out all the signals and I don't think I like you anymore. And then he tries to kill her. That is incel behavior 101. Then you got the weird press conference thing where Batman and Alfred hack the feed and play the audio back of what the Penguin said in the car of like,
I'll take care of the squealing, wretched, pinhead puppets of Gotham.
and they play it back on a CD, which makes sense. But then, then Bruce goes like scratches the CD and it goes like it's fucking like it's tricky, like it's Run DMC or something. That's not how that works. That's not how CDs work, Bruce, or anybody who wrote this screenplay. But then again, I guess it was early days, 90, 92, 91. Penguin gets outed. Shrek ditches him without a second thought, you know, because that's the monster that he is. And the Penguin goes back into the sewer and is like, fuck being human, fuck all this shit. I want to kill kids. I want to kill some kids. I want to kill everyone's kids. It's funny. I was saying before, it's darker, but it's also more cartoonish, especially as you get into this third act where, again, it is the ultimate plot is the murder of countless children by penguins with rockets on their backs. It's unusual. The start of the third act is kind of goes from a boom. There's the annual masquerade ball at Shrek's department store where Bruce turns up without a mask on, and so does Selina. And they're like, I'm tired of wearing masks. And Selina admits that she's come to kill Max. He's like, who do you think you are, you know?
I don't know anymore. Mistletoe can be deadly if you eat it.
A kiss can be even deadlier if you mean it. And they both realise. And then Catwoman has a wonderful line, or Michelle Pfeiffer has a wonderful line. Do we have to start fighting now? And as they're going for the door to go and have a conversation or punch on outside, boom, Penguin rises up from the ground. He takes Shrek down to back to the sewer lair to, you know, be killed with the children. And then you see the train of the kids, you know, being kidnapped, you know, the firstborn sons. The Batman intercepts a monkey. So fucking weird, this movie. A monkey delivers the message from Batman on Bat stationery, no less. A little piece of paper with a Batman symbol on it. Penguin cracks the shits. And then he's got his army of real penguins and kind of fake people penguins as well sitting there, and he's giving a big kind of like pattern speech. And that doesn't make sense because penguins don't understand English, is more my point than anything else. Batman turns up, you know, in the skidoo or the skiff, the bat skiff, and he's going through the sewer, and the two penguins shoot missiles at him. And there's a great moment of, what the fuck just happened? I just had missiles shot at me by two amphibious birds. It's so weird. The more I talk about it, the weirder it is in my head. Like, I know it's strange, but when you're just watching it, you're like, yeah, this is all perfect, makes sense. And then you talk it through, you know, even when there's no one else here, you're like, yeah, this movie's fucking whack. In a great way, in an awesome way. Penguin tries to escape in his duck thing. Batman sort of shoots out and they have a fight. And the Penguin's got a great line.
You're just jealous because I'm a genuine freak and you have to wear a mask.
You might be right.
And there is that. There is even though there is a clear delineation between the two characters, it's also very, very clear that they are similar in that they come from the same place, but with very different paths. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's, why I'm asking, do you know what I mean? You're not here. Penguin gets knocked out by bats, falls to his death, presumably, and then it's a battle for Selina's soul, really. Batman turns up just as she's about to kill Max Shrek and tries to stop her from doing it, and she won't let that happen. And it's really heartbreaking. He pulls the mask off, the famous bit where they've, just for a second, they've removed the black makeup that is underneath the eyes to make the mask look fuller. Yeah, it really is quite sad, and she says,
I would love to live with you in your castle. Forever, just like in a fairy tale. I just couldn't live with myself, so don't pretend this is a happy ending.
Shrek shoots Batman, then shoots Catwoman, and she survives, the rest of the shots because she has 9 lives apparently, and she kills him. She electrocutes him to death. It's pretty gory again when Batman's digging through the wreckage and finds the body. You see Chris Walken charred corpse, like, I was like, whoa. There wasn't a Happy Meal toilet at that particular moment. Arctic world is blowing up around them, and the Penguin, as is a villain's wont, comes out of the water, maybe for one last battle, and he walks up to the big tub where he's got all of his umbrellas, and Batman sort of turns. He's got that great push in on Bruce's face as we assume he's about to get shot at or something. Penguin opens the umbrella and it's got like the baby toys on it.
Yet, I'm fit to kill one.
And I never noticed that line until I think it was last year. I heard it correctly for whatever, and fuck, it made me laugh. It's such a good joke. Falls to his death, a bunch of penguins come out, and when I was at the Astor, there was audible laughs at this moment because it's supposed to be really sweet and tender of these, penguins, taking him to his watery grave, but they're just children in suits, I'm assuming, or little people. And then we end with probably the way we should end: Batman driving home, sees Catwoman's silhouette. And he gets out and he finds an actual cat, a black cat. Gets in the car with it and he says,
well, come what may. Merry Christmas, Mr. Wayne.
Merry Christmas, Albert. Goodwill toward men. And women.
Nice little delivery there from Keaton. And then you get the hero shot, but it's Catwoman. It kind of goes up over all the buildings. The bat signal comes up and Catwoman's head sort of comes up into the frame, and that's the end. And it's her story. It is absolutely her arc, and I love it. I love this movie so much. I think it's wonderful every single time I see it, and I watch it twice a year, always once on Christmas. Final thoughts on this one: basically, it's a perfect film in what it's trying to do. It executes itself exactly the way that it should, and it is the most singular vision of any superhero film. Like those Marvel movies, I mean, there's an argument that Zack Snyder's, his DCU films are very much his. I think the overarching idea is there, but the specificity isn't. Also, you can compare this in the same way to the other sort of big high watermark for superhero movies or for comic book based movies. Richard Donner's 1978 Superman. Donner was a director for hire. That film would have got made with him or without him, and it probably wouldn't have been as good, but it certainly would have looked the same. The design of it probably would have been the same. But this is absolutely Tim Burton's vision. You can't take it away from him. It's a beautiful piece of work, and I recommend you go and check it out one more time.
You don't really think you'll win, do you?
So that's it for this week on the Stitch Up. Thank you so much for coming back. Again, Happy New Year. I hope that you are well and that you're, going into this new year with positivity and gratitude and nothing but love. And we'll see you next week for something else silly. I can't wait. Thanks very much. Take care.